Hi and welcome to this webinar about Open Radio Access Networks at i14y Lab. Today I'm going to talk specifically about conflict management in radio intelligent controllers or RIC applications together with our partners in i14y Lab. Recently we have published a white paper on this topic, and today I would like to give an overview and also highlight some key aspects. My name is i14y and I am involved in ORAN activities at i14y Lab, and among other topics we are specifically focusing on this conflict management in RIC applications. Let's start with a brief introduction on ORAN and also what we are basically going to discuss within this webinar. So in contrast with proprietary networks, ORAN proposes and provides an open and disaggregated architecture with well-defined open interfaces. It means that we have different modules which are independent and have certain interfaces that can talk to each other. Beside this openness and also disaggregation, ORAN has defined and introduced this RIC or Radio Intelligent Controller, which enables basically intelligence and performance optimization within ORAN. There are two near real-time RIC and also non-real-time RIC considered for ORAN architecture, which basically have this difference in terms of time granularity that they basically will control the network within that. For near real-time RIC, applications are called xApps, and when it comes to non-real-time RIC, we talk about RIC-Apps. As a result of these benefits of openness and disaggregation, we have this open room for SMEs and startups and research institutes to enhance the performance of the ORAN network. So different entities can contribute to the community and to the industry. But on the same basically way, and because of this openness and contribution from different entities, now we have a more challenging and complex environment for management and optimization. So as I mentioned earlier, we have recently published this white paper on this topic of conflict management for RIC applications. There are some key factors that we have addressed here. One is about definition of objectives, basically objectives and conflicts in different objectives. Then we talk about and investigate the standards and the gaps that exist there, and we try to give some analysis on that regard. We talk about the challenges when it comes to interoperability, and also we introduce some management techniques both for detection as well as mitigation. So I would like to point out that, beside this comprehensive and extensive a study of the whole conflict management problem, what makes this white paper interesting is covering basically different perspectives. So we have included the vendors or developers' point of view as well as the network operator's perspective. Also, we have included and elaborated on standardizations and ORAN alliance entities to provide this full coverage of different perspectives in this white paper. To start with this basically topic, one needs to first define and introduce different categories and types of conflict that exist, and also the associated challenges that exist with each of them. So we have included two types of conflicts here. Basically two types of categories. One is about vertical versus horizontal. So in the vertical conflicts, we are talking about conflicts that exist between RIC-Apps and xApps, while in the case of horizontal conflicts, we are talking about only xApps or only RIC-Apps conflicts. So you can immediately see here that for each of these basically types of conflicts, one might need to have different approaches to tackle the challenge. Also, ORAN Alliance has introduced three different types of conflicts, starting with the direct conflicts, which you would basically with two or more xApps try to manipulate and set the same parameters. In the second type, which is indirect conflicts, basically the target parameters are influenced by more than one xApp. And the third category, which is implicit conflicts, meaning that one xApp tries to fine-tune some metrics which unwantedly might have a conflicting, let's say, effect for another xApp. And here you can also see that based on the type and category of the conflict, we might need different approaches, basically based on the simplicity or difficulty of detection, but also resolving the problem. Beside all of this discussion on the types and definition of the conflicts, one thing that matters, I mean, this basically provides the basis and also natural structure for this discussion, but we also need to understand the impact of these conflicts. And specifically, when it comes to the network operator's point of view, we have addressed three main key points here, starting with severity, so basically talking about how relevant this conflict is, and the reach, which means what are the propagation dynamics of these conflicts, and eventually the vulnerability creation. Now I would like to talk about conflict management, but what we need before directly talking about conflict management is the requirements and KPIs that are relevant in this topic. For this, we have addressed basically the network operator view as well as the xApp developer point of view. So in the priority-based order, what we have listed in the white paper are operational stability, network security, operational efficiency, network performance, and minimal total cost of ownership. And from xApp developer view, we have mentioned that you need a standardized conflict management module. Also, you need xApp compliance with conflict management guidelines. In addition, unified procedures and protocols need to be introduced. And eventually, we need some template-based standardization for xApp development. So when we have these basically 2 point of views together, we can have a suitable definition of requirements and KPIs. And this enables us to now talk about conflict detection, which is basically the very first step when it comes to conflict management and mitigation. So here we have basically discussed 4 different categories of conflict detection, starting with using catalogs. So basically what we have here is we have a list of details of xApps, and from there you can already, in some cases, be able to understand the conflicting objectives that exist between some of the xApps. Also, we have proposed conflict manager approach, which is to some extent similar to the previous one. The difference here is that the conflict manager basically collects information from xApps and tries to detect and identify these conflicts based on this collected information. Also, we have proposed causal analysis in order to do the conflict management and detection basically. So here we explain what is the difference between correlation and causality, and then we are trying to identify inter-applications effects based on the available data in order to detect the conflicts. Eventually, we have also studied these ORAN standardization efforts and also understanding what mechanisms they have proposed and provided in order to execute these conflict detection approaches. As you can imagine, the next step after detection is mitigation or resolving this conflict that exists within the apps. One important point to remember here is that the main issue of existence of these conflicts is that we have different applications from different entities or different vendors or operators. And this is already the start of the challenge, because in many cases, a full coordination of these apps is not possible or feasible, or something that is not pleasant for these entities. So we have already discussed and introduced this existing trade-off between coordination, so how much of information you would like to share with other entities, versus how much of performance in terms of resolving the conflict you can get. And basically we have proposed that we need to have a conflict mitigator unit or module that is in contact with different apps and entities. And it basically collects the information and, if needed, instructs these apps to maybe reverse their action or take back their actions or guide them in some basically ways. And in this way, one can basically, based on the policies and the strategies that the network operators have, basically tries to resolve the conflicts that exist in the network. As the final slide, I would like to introduce this i14y lab simulator that we have developed within this project. So it is basically an ORAN digital twin. So you can imagine that any profits and benefits of a digital twin can be also offered here. It is an NS3 based ORAN simulator. So it's an open source simulator. We have basically developed different modules in order to be able to test and investigate different functionalities of ORAN networks. Among other things, basically we want to use this simulator, and we have used it so far to some extent in order to study this conflict management problem, as well as evaluating the performance of conflict mitigation approaches. This is one advantage of having this simulator, because this gives us this possibility to create and generate data for further studies and fully understand this issue without the need to test it in a real testbed or a real network. With that, I would like to conclude my talk. I would like to encourage and invite everyone to have a look at our white paper on conflict management in RIC applications, and thanks for your attention.